Good morning, everybody. I wanted to take a few minutes and just share with you some things about Module 1 in this community risk reduction course. I know there's a lot of material here. I'm getting my computer adjusted, and I'm not sure how to deal with it. There's a lot of things that I have put in there as reference material for you. There's a lot of things that I want you to grasp the concept. But I also realize that it's overwhelming. And when you sit down to try to read all this, does it really make any sense? And some of the things I've found and I've just kind of taken from here and there, we're in the process of putting together an online open source type of a textbook for this course. And so if that's any comfort to you, it doesn't really help you at this moment. But I wanted to start in Module 1 and kind of go through, maybe this will serve as a summary for Module 1 on what I wanted you to get out of that. I have some notes that I want to look at as well. So I want to talk about, this is the first step, is community risk reduction. Is identifying and defining a community, identifying what risk is and what risk reduction means, and some of the benefits, some of the challenges. And then it culminates, Module 1 culminates with your expression of a vision for what you would like to see happen in your community as you go through and identify some of the risk issues and some of those processes in your own community. So when we're talking about community, um, it's community can be defined in a lot of different ways. We think about community. I live in Swainsboro, and that's a community. The college itself is a community, and what defines a community. Different neighborhoods can be defined as communities. Um, Churches, ethnic groups, um, religious organizations, all of those can be defined uh, as communities as well. Um, when we think about community risk, we want to look at what puts a community at risk, what puts the people at risk, what are the risks that they are experiencing. And this is kind of a new concept, and it encompasses not only fire but injury as well. So, I know in the last class, one of the students looked at gun control issues, not so much gun control, but gun safety is what I'd rather say. And in another student looked at the overall safety of the Hispanic community in his town where he lived. And so those are some of the different ways that we can define community. A lot of times it's a shift in thinking when we think about prevention or risk or reducing the risk, which is what we're doing. We can't prevent them all, but we can reduce the risk that results from um, a tornado or a flood. By helping people be prepared for those kinds of things. But it's also examining our communities and designing interventions and strategies to reduce risk based upon that community. It's not global. It's not one size fits all. It's it's based on your community, who lives there, what type of background the people have, and we'll get into a lot of that as we go through some of the different modules. So, defining community risk. A community's risk are those things or events that present a danger to people, places, or things in the community. It could be a single isolated event that might affect a single household or a neighborhood. That could be a fire. It could be, a hurricane, flooding, tornadoes, those kinds of things. Hazardous materials incidents. Here on campus today, where we have a group that have come from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety, and they have an Arrive Alive kind of vehicle. Um, to it's a promotion against driving under the influence. That's a risk in our community here at the college. A community's risk is the product of the hazards and the vulnerability of the people in that community, meaning how prepared are they? How vulnerable are they to this risk? Is it a huge risk? How likely is this risk to happen? Are some of the other things that we have to look at. Risk is uncertainty. It's hard to quantify or qualify, um, but we can conduct risk assessments that will help us understand these things. When we talk about risk reduction, it's those measures taken by a community or by the people in that community that impact the risk of the community. It doesn't mean that we can prevent them. We know that fires can be prevented. We know that a lot of unintentional injuries can be prevented. But the other thing is, even if we have a fire, when we're talking about risk reduction, it's reducing. How can we reduce that risk? Smoke alarms, having a home escape plan, that kind of thing. What people can do to maybe not eliminate the risk or the event, but to be prepared for it, to mitigate the damage that it might do. Um, it might be eliminating it totally, such as with fire safety or using gun locks, that kind of thing. Child safety seats in vehicles. A lot of times in a community where there is risk reduction activities taking place, there's a champion. And we see this in a lot of different departments, whether it's a fire department or EMS or law enforcement. There's one individual that takes it to heart, whether it's due to an experience that they've had or just because they um, believe in helping people in a proactive kind of way. For so many years, public safety has been reactive, and this is a proactive way of approaching things. When we look at the officer in these agencies, he or she should be a leader in risk reduction, and it should be promoted in every aspect of the department. And that's that champion that we are referring to. So there's a lot that goes with risk reduction, and we're going to break it apart as we go through the course a little bit more. It's more than just a process; it's an attitude. Um, when I say community risk reduction is a process, I've been doing this for 25 years. And I always used to call it the dog and pony show. We would take everything, we take the fire trucks, we teach all these kids, we tell them everything that we wanted them to know, even if it wasn't relevant to them. And this is when we talk about risk reduction, it's kind of I guess it's an upgrade from that, in that we are looking, before we take our dog and pony show out, we're going to look at what risks impact this particular audience or this particular target population. And so that is part of your vision of what is the change that you want to see. What is it that's impacting, and how do we want to reduce this? Um, it is about a community that assesses risks and hazards and then develops specific interventions. That's what risk reduction is. Um, we see it a lot in public health, but it's kind of working its way over into emergency services. Some of the benefits of community risk reduction, well, that kind of goes without saying, that the impacts of fires and other risk is reduced. Um, People are safer. And keep this in mind, that when people are safer, when the community's safer, then we're safer doing our jobs. We are safer in the community and doing what we need to do. Lower frequency of hazardous events, fewer injuries, fewer deaths, and reduced property loss. And that's the mission statement of most public safety organizations. Through the process of risk reduction, an acceptable level of risk will be established. We're going to talk about that, what that means, and how you can accept that. What that means is, how much are people willing to endure or put up with, for lack of a better way of putting it, before they do something? Is it a monetary thing, meaning, if they want to increase their fire protection, what's the cost of that? And it's a cost benefit is what it boils down to when we talk about acceptable level of risk. And this is something that's hard because a lot of people don't believe that fires will happen to them. They don't believe that they're going to have a crash. They believe that always happens to other people. And so we have to convince people about that level of risk. The process of community risk reduction engages the community. in having a better quality of life. That's all we want for people. We want them to have a better quality of life and improve that quality of life, even in the lowest income areas. They can improve their quality of life through risk reduction. Community risk reduction brings credibility to public safety agencies. Not only are we there to respond when called or when needed, but we really care about the people and what happens to them, and that they don't experience this injury. Standing on the corner or on the street with a house burned to the ground, yeah, we care about them. We showed up. We're going to help them recover. But would it not have been better to help them prevent that from happening in the first place? So that brings a lot of credibility to the mission of public safety agencies. And that's the next thing. It allows us to be successful at achieving our mission. A well-seasoned fire chief said one time that when his trucks rolled out of the station on a call, they had failed in their mission. Pretty strong words. Pretty strong words. So this does help us be successful. We're going to talk about saving lives and protecting property. This is where it's at, is in community risk reduction. And then it also affects emergency responder safety. If we don't have fires, we don't have line of duty deaths. If we're not responding emergency, we may not have crashes. So what we do in community risk reduction benefits us to make us safer in the jobs that we do. Community risk reduction is not without challenges. A lot of people I know in my career, it's not what I signed up for. I'm not here to babysit people. I'm not here to go, do this, that, and the other. A lot of people don't like doing risk reduction. And so those are some of the challenges that we might see. Attitudes, internal and external. There may be some program challenges, such as training for personnel on how to do community risk reduction or deliver community risk reduction. A turnover, data, having valid data so that we can determine what the real risk is and who it's happening to. Clear directives, even a time challenge. We don't have time for this. I believe that you always have time for risk reduction, but that's my personal opinion. A lack of experience. We don't train public safety personnel a lot on risk reduction or working with people. We respond them on how to respond to fires and how to take care of people in medical situations or emergency situations. But the whole aspect of we can look to the whole aspect of community policing and see that they have it going on in areas where they are doing strong community policing. So a lack of experience is a problem for a lot of people. People get nervous when they have to get out into the community. A lot of it's a cultural issue, and you hear this a lot. It's not what we do. This is not what I signed up for. I want to go shoot the bad guys. I want to put the fire out. I want to drive fast. I don't. It's a soft kind of a news. It's a touchy-feely, almost in some ways, kind of activity or event. But it's important. But it certainly is important. It's proactive, and we're not used to that. If somebody calls, we go. But this is reaching out to the community before they need us, and that's a different place than we are used to being. The community may not understand it either, especially if you have different cultural groups within your community. The all, hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, doesn't always work. And we have to be sensitive to that. So getting the community to buy in is also, and also the political leadership. They don't understand it either. I believe that one day politicians are going to figure out we've been spending all this money when if we had put a little bit more money into risk reduction, we wouldn't have needed everything else. Now, I'm not saying we don't need emergency responders. I don't want to get that rumor started. You're putting me out of business, and that's not true. But there is a lot to be said, and some other countries have figured that out as well, that it's an economic issue. And while a lot of times politicians don't understand about putting money into risk reduction initiatives because they're hard to measure. And we do talk a little bit about how you evaluate risk reduction, but it is hard to measure. But there's ways that you can do it that certainly are effective. The officer has a huge role. When we think about community risk reduction and leadership and that in administration, any officer has a huge role in risk reduction, in supporting risk reduction efforts, um, that in making sure that their people support them, that there's an attitude of openness and proactiveness and acceptance in risk reduction activities, in creating that positive vision. That's why I've asked you to create that personal vision statement. This is something that you can share with your department, with your personnel. If you're not a part of a department, you could share it with a civic organization that you're a part of. I don't think that any civic organization is going to be in tune to community risk reduction. Um, this is something that we can look at doing anywhere that we are. And so the officer or the leader plays a huge role in risk reduction and in community risk reduction activities. Um, we have to work through the government processes, and a lot of times community risk reduction and the leaders of risk reduction can influence those political leaders in the community as well. Um, you have to kind of test the waters a lot of times to see what they're willing to accept and what they're not willing to accept. Sometimes community risk reduction um, is a may mean a change in um, ordinances or regulations at the local level. And so you have to be able to know your political leadership and work through them as well. A couple of terms I'd like for you to be familiar with, and that is organizational equity and community equity. And when we talk about equity, it's just like equity in your home. It's just like interest that you're earning at the bank, a little bit anyway. Um, Organizational equity means that you have buy-in from your personnel. It means that if you, as the leader of risk reduction activities, need support, it's a potential support that you have. That's what equity is, and so you can make a withdrawal of I need your support for this particular event on this particular day or with this activity. Just remember that you have to replace that by doing something for the organization. How can you help the organization? Um, you have to create that organizational culture that promotes and values community risk reduction. Um, it's working collectively towards a safer community, and that's what brings the organization together. By identifying community stakeholders, you can build some community equity. A stakeholder, of course, is someone that has an interest in this. If you are, let's say that we're going to look at child passenger safety as our community risk, then you're going to look to your law enforcement personnel, but also what about those people that like Head Start centers or um, daycare centers, schools, um, pediatricians, people that have a stake, that have an interest in your topic. You engage those stakeholders and you begin to build some community equity, which is the same thing as organizational equity, except you're building that in the community. You are helping the community, and you're going to be able to make a withdrawal when you need some funding. You need a little bit of money for some smoke alarms, or you need someone to sponsor an event or to provide flyers for an event. You're able to do that. That's what it means to have equity in your organization and in your community as well. So this is kind of laying the foundation for community risk reduction. Like I said, there's a lot of articles. I'm going to look over at my computer right now. We've talked about a lot of the things in there about building support for organizational and community risk reduction. And the last thing in that first module is to create that personal vision statement. What do you want to see in your community when you have a risk? Or not even just maybe you haven't identified a risk yet. But if you are going to be the risk reduction coordinator for your organization, your agency, what's your overarching vision? A community where there's no injuries. It's okay to have a vision that is, a vision is not necessarily easy to reach or reachable, but it's more than just a dream. Certainly, you to be able to put that into words, what your vision is for your community when it comes to community risk reduction. Like I say, so far we haven't looked at our community yet. We're going to do that in subsequent modules. And then we'll talk about what the risks are, and you will identify a risk. And that's where you're going to come up with goals for your program and objectives and how you're going to reach those goals. But right now, we just want that vision. What do you see for your community? What do you want to see in the community from a risk reduction standpoint in making people safer as it relates to your work or your interest in the community? I've posted this as a summary to Module 1. I'm going to get on Module 2. Again, I'm going to try to get that site organized a little better as far as what I do want you to look at and focus on, and then what I do want there to be on the site as reference material, resource material for you as you work on your own project. I'm going to try to separate those things out. I appreciate any kind of comments or input that you have. Again, I'm trying to work on this course and get it better organized, but it is my passion, and so I want to teach you everything that I know, and hopefully I will be able to do that in the 15 weeks that we have together. So thanks so much for your time today, and I look forward to next time. Thanks.